Welcome to BTR News. My name is Scotty Reid, and this episode is brought to you by people, not corporations, those who donate to the nonprofit Black Talk Media Project. In this episode, I want to take a look at this recent interview, and it was a very short exchange between Joe Biden and the host of the Breakfast Club, Charlamagne the God, but it is definitely worth breaking down, as I know most people are focused on the racial aspect of it and not to belittle how important that aspect of Joe Biden, just some of his racist beliefs are rising to the surface. It's hard to suppress your speech when you're that old, or your beliefs when you're that old. As they say, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. And so Joe Biden, to say the least, if you're not going to say he's racist, then he's definitely been very conservative in supporting what many deem as really conservative policies in terms of mass incarceration. Hence the name of why I call him Slaver Joe. All right. So, but he, the Charlamagne the God is actually from South Carolina native. The Breakfast Club, of course, is based in New York City. But remember, don't forget that Charlamagne the God also endorsed Michael Bloomberg during the primary process. Michael Bloomberg, who was buying up black souls at a clip rate only an ultra billionaire could afford. So, but I'll be stopping this video at different points because several issues were raised where Slaver Joe has always shown a propensity to tell lies about his record and his entire political life. Most famously, stealing a personal speech in nature by a British politician. Also lying about, the number of degrees that he had, or whether or not he had a degree from a certain interview, something that has been used to try to discredit allegations against him in terms of Tara Reid, with a university recently saying she has no degree. That's pretty typical in the United States. A lot of people lie on their resumes about degrees. I've heard several people, and all of them were white. Not to say that black people don't inflate their resumes as well. But I've heard white people tell me that, they've done that or engaged in that to get edge in getting jobs and what have you. But I think it's fair to say that Slaver Joe is a stereotypical politician in terms of having this character of being a liar. But I mean, really, it's not a caricature. It's his character when it comes to Joe Biden and telling lies. Now, he's talking like, Trump is Hitler, and Trump is not Hitler. We don't see any smokestacks with smoke rising from him with human victims and what have you. He's certainly, in my opinion, a slaver too, in terms of his support for private prison, expansion and financial support from the federal government to incarcerate human beings for civil infractions, especially as it relates to immigrants seeking political asylum, fleeing a lot of violence, which is a lot of it rooted in U.S. foreign policy in those South and Central American countries, as well as Mexico. But Joe Biden was part of a previous administration where they ran on hope and change, and a lot of people did have hope in Barack Obama, but they got very little in terms of change, except for in symbolism and what have you. But in terms of basic policy, in all areas, it was basically another conservative, in the very least, you would say moderate administration. And I look at moderates the same way because of my spiritual beliefs as what's said about fence riders, and the scripture saying that I'll spew you out of my mouth if you are lukewarm, you're neither hot nor cold. That's a fence rider. And so when you fence ride on issues like 21st century slavery, which is often referred to by abolitionists as prison slavery, modern abolitionists today, because the 13th Amendment never abolished slavery, but nothing changed under the Hope and Change administration. Okay. In fact, in some areas it got worse. In terms of black wealth, it definitely got worse. Black wealth which is the primary demographic, black people, that is the primary demographic that we market to, we lost more wealth in history. Anytime in U.S. history, black people collectively lost more wealth because of that mortgage crisis and Wall Street meltdown, um, which had global reverberations. And what did that administration do but bail them out? No criminal prosecutions and no bailout for what they was for anyone, let alone black people who lost more wealth than anything. So let's go ahead and break down this video.
Vice President Biden, I've read some of your black agenda, and you say that you would decriminalize marijuana. What's the difference between legalizing it and decriminalizing it?
Because they're trying to find out whether or not there is any impact on the use of marijuana, not in leading you to other drugs, but what it affects. Does it affect long-term development of the brain? And we should wait till the studies are done. I think science matters.
I think we got decades and decades of studies from actual weed smokers, though.
Yeah, I do. I know a lot of weed smokers.
Someone should ask Slaver Joe's campaign why it is couching proposals to maintain the liberal or neoliberal status quo on the issue of cannabis legalization and as it relates to prison slavery. Why they want to couch this under a so-called black agenda. I mean, this to me continues white society's historic and racist association of drugs and perceived criminality with black people in efforts to push for and maintain a prohibition on cannabis. Slaver Joe's central response to the question of what's the difference between legalization and decriminalization, and he, of course, doesn't answer it outright. He gives an answer meant to confuse people about decriminalization because it does lead to people being incarcerated and it winding up in prison slavery. Again, he doesn't answer the question, but makes a ham-fisted attempt to dazzle us or blind us with science. Mass incarceration is Joe Biden's legacy, and it makes sense that he would do as little as possible to undermine that legacy. The crime bill, Biden crime bill, is named that for a reason. The 1994 Biden crime bill, although he has some other bills dealing with criminalization to lead to prison slavery, aka what people call mass incarceration, that bears his name. He famously, and you can check the facts on this, but he pushed Ronald Reagan and the Republicans, sitting over there with them Dixiecrats like Jesse Helms and Strom Thurmond and that whole bunch, and pushing this mass incarceration, which is really a continuation of slavery under the guise of the 13th Amendment. But that's his legacy. He's not going to do anything to harm that. That would be admitting that he's wrong, and he's never apologized, to my knowledge, for mass incarceration. Okay, he has earned the label I have gifted him as Slaver Joe. Now, let's look at what decriminalization looks like in the state of North Carolina, where I live, because it varies from state to state. But North Carolina doesn't have a legalization in for any reason, whether it's medicinal or recreation. But in the website Fine Law, it says the basic provisions of North Carolina's marijuana laws are listed below. Code 90.86 section, possession less than a half ounce misdemeanor, $200 fine. Of course, we know a lot of people in impoverished areas try to cope, and they don't have money for no $200 fine, and they can't pay the fine. They end up in jail. It's the same as cash bail. You ain't got the $200 to pay your fine, then you can go to jail. All right, a half ounce to 1.5 ounce, which again is not a lot. You can end up with 1 to 45 days in jail. That could devastate a person's life, especially if they're a parent, if they are the sole quote unquote provider for that family, the job holder in that family. That could destroy family. What if it's a single mom? Her kids could wind up in kitty jail or another form of slavery in this country known as the foster system, where a lot of children are end up being abused. Okay. Now it goes on to say if you got a half an ounce and a half to 10 pounds, that's a felony, 3 to 8 months in jail and $1,000 fine. Now, sale, class one felony, but not went under 5 grams for no consideration. I don't understand what the for no consideration means, but they're saying it's a class one felony unless you selling under 5 grams. Trafficking, and now goes into how you can be charged with trafficking, and it has a note: state laws are constantly changing. Contact the North Carolina drug crime attorney or conduct your own legal research to verify the state laws you are researching. So decriminalization looks different in different states. Joe Biden, in a feeble attempt to once again blind us with science, so to speak, says we're waiting on studies. Well, someone should ask him what studies. Can he cite any studies that's being done right now that he's waiting on to determine the impact of cannabis on brain development, as if someone is out there recommending that children be allowed to legally consume because human brains stop developing once one reaches, on average, the age of 26 years old. Nobody's out there saying a 13-year-old should be able to legally purchase alcohol. I mean, it's a legitimate question in terms of brain development, and that's why people cite or come up with these legal age limits in terms of like alcohol. Now, alcohol's legal age limit is 21 years old, which is 5 years short of when the brain stops development. But I don't think that Slaver Joe is going to make the argument that, hey, we should raise the age of the legal limit to buy, or the legal age to purchase alcohol legally. We got too many people dying in college, too many college students dying from alcohol poisoning because alcohol is a popular drug of choice among college students, except for, as some studies have shown in states that have legalized, that cannabis is more popular and has led to a reduction in alcohol consumption. So of course the alcohol industry doesn't want any competition whatsoever in that regard, but we don't hear of anybody dying from cannabis intoxication on college campuses. Okay, so let's take a look at what's out there on alcohol's impact on brain development. Alcohol is a depressant that affects the brain by causing the brain to slow down. Alcohol can affect your child's brain, which continues developing into their early 20s. Alcohol can negatively impact your child's problem-solving skills and performance at school. And that comes to you from an article from healthy.wa.gov.au, which seems to be like a Australian designation. So alcohol in the developing brain, healthy WA.
Y'all was being vetted, and a lot of people on social media, they're not too happy about that. And it's because they want your running mate to be a black woman. I don't know if you saw the op-ed in the Washington Post by some of the leading black women voices in this country, and they feel since black women are such a loyal voting bloc, and black people saved your political life in the primaries this year, they have things they want from you, and one of them is a black woman running mate. What do you say to them?
What I say to them is that I'm not acknowledging anybody who is being considered, but I guarantee you there are multiple black women being considered. Multiple.
Now, in response to the question about, or the question to Slaver Joe being asked about reports that Senator Amy Klobuchar is being vetted, which is a lot different than saying that, hey, somebody's just being considered. We can say that about anybody. I considered that person for about 5 seconds, and then I moved on. And I want, to put my energy in vetting those who have a real shot. But I also think of, instead of referring to people as leading black women, or these people as leading black women, what does that exactly mean, Charlamagne? I view the system choosing our leaders as just appendages of the Democratic Party, chosen by the neoliberal ruling class that finances the party. Perhaps former prosecutor Klobuchar's deal to endorse Biden during the primary to help him capture to white conservative and moderate women voting bloc was the vice presidential spot to help him perhaps carry some of those key white women votes in these swing states that helped Donald Trump carry the electoral college. Perhaps another prosecutor by the name of Kamala Harris has a deal to become the second black attorney general for those excited by such titles. Still in appendage of the neoliberal cabal in the DOJ and FBI that bungled the Clinton email scandal and came up with the racist designation black identity extremists. And of course, new abolitionists, those who are against prison slavery and are for its abolishment, certainly know Senator Harris's record as a California attorney general, and perhaps she wants to be Biden's, and that's why she endorsed him. Furthermore, a female vice president or a black male vice president for that matter might appeal to some black voters still looking for another black symbology fix like a drug, but logically thinking people should reject the neoliberal strategy rooted in identity politics and not substance politics in the form of policies to help the masses, like ending prison slavery.
Listen, you got to come see us when you come to New York, VP Biden.
I will.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my community. I would love to see.
Take a look at my record, man. I extended the voting rights 25 years. I have a record that is second to none. The NAACP has endorsed me every time I've run. Come on. Take a look at the record.
There we saw in that segment Joe Biden making comments that has offended a lot of people as if as a white man with a questionable past, there's no question the racist ramifications that policy that Joe Biden has championed has had on the black community, but he is not an arbitrator on who's black and who's not. Again, the category or classification of black was created in the United States to justify the enslavement of highly melanated Africans as opposed to continuing the enslavement of Africans and Irish people conquered by the British aristocrat ruling class here in the colonies. And in order to maintain it, Bacon's Rebellion, where all of the indentured servants, as everybody was indentured at that time, rose up together to protest their mistreatment to the planter class or aristocracy. And in order to counter future rebellions, that's when slavery in the United States became tied to one's skin color, the invention of race in the United States body politic. But look at Joe Biden's record. Look at his record of lies. He's not even trying to defend some of the stuff that he's done. He's not apologized for the Biden crime bill, but he has told some lies about it and tried to minimize its impact, like saying that, hey, most people was incarcerated at the states and my bill had no impact on that. No, Joe, we know that your bill provided billions of dollars for private prisons and the expansion of state prisons. So you've earned that label I've gifted you with, Slaver Joe. Then he mentions the NAACP. Well, the NAACP said Joe Biden's lying again. See, he has a record of telling lies. In a press release, the NAACP, which Joe Biden claimed had endorsed him, Derek Johnson, president and CEO of the NAACP, made the following statement about a remark by former Vice President Slaver Joe Biden during his Friday morning interview on the Breakfast Club. Yesterday, former Vice President Joe Biden made a comment about the NAACP's endorsement. We want to clarify that the NAACP is a nonpartisan organization and does not endorse candidates for political office at any level. Persons affiliated with the NAACP at the national, state, and local levels are free to make candidate endorsements in a personal capacity, but they do not reflect support by the NAACP as an organization. And so, Joe Biden continues to lie. He continues to rely on lies and the fact that a lot of people are not going to do the research, or a lot of people are so, I don't know what's the proper term, in fear, rooted in fear. And a lot of it's media fueled of Donald Trump. Again, Donald Trump is a terrible president, and also, by the evidence, a terrible person. But Joe Biden's no better. He's like Trump light, but I mean, not really in Trump light when you compare their 30-year records. Again, this is Donald Trump, first time ever holding political office, so he doesn't have much as a record on issues like mass incarceration like Joe Biden has. But yeah, do check out his record. I'll tell you, now is the time to be agitating for policies that you want. I'm an abolitionist first and foremost. I want an end to prison slavery, which I felt like that was accomplished by Bernie Sanders adopting a prisoner's bill of rights that was put forth by prisoners and abolitionists alike. He simply adopted it, and he didn't adopt everything, but it would have effectively brought an end to prison slavery, the prison slavery that Joe Biden expanded, and that's why I call him Slaver Joe. This is independent Black media. It is supported in part by you, the people, with your donations to the nonprofit North Carolina-based Black Talk Media Project. We are not supported by corporations or businesses. We are not like the Me Too organizations and saying we can't cover certain issues or certain people because, hey, we might lose our funding. No, we rely totally on you, the people. If you want to see projects like the Black Talk Radio Network continue, please make a donation today. This has been Scotty Reid with a Black Talk Radio News commentary. Peace and blessings to all. Be safe.